Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. My name is Emily Whitehouse. I am the Associate Director of Admissions at the Yale School of Management, and that is for the Master's Degree Program in Asset Management, which I assume is what you're all interested in. So happy you can join us today. We are reporting live with the Career Development Office. My colleagues from the CDO, as we call it, are joining us today to offer a great presentation, letting you know a little bit about the resources that are available to you as a student when you are hopefully admitted to Yale SOM and the Master's Degree Program in Asset Management. So joining me today, Abigail Keys and Joel Pearson. Abigail, why don't you start with a quick intro, really quick, just realized I forgot, quick housekeeping item. So there is a full presentation planned. There will be time for Q&A. We have 45 minutes together. So please phrase your questions in the Q&A section. I got some great pre-submitted questions, but I will also be sure to prioritize those submitted through Q&A. So thanks. Take it away, Abigail.
Great. Thank you, Emily. So I'm Abigail Keys. I'm the Assistant Dean for Career Development at the Yale School of Management. Thank you for joining us today. I've been at Yale now for about 4 years, and before that, I spent many years at NYU Stern. So years ago, before my stint in higher ed, I actually started my career in asset management before going to business school, and then went through a number of different industries after that. But it is definitely where I started and something that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm excited. I always get excited talking about this topic. I am excited to be joined today by Joel Pearson. So Joel, do you want to just say hello and introduce yourself and your role with the asset management students?
Sure. So my name is Joel Pearson. I am a coach in the CDO here at Yale SOM. I've been here for just over a year now, and previously spent another 5 years working with MBA and specialty master's students in business schools. And I am sort of the primary coaching liaison to this program. So I put together, we'll talk about this more, but some summer programming and then coaching and programming activities that are specific to those searching for, in this program for asset management roles.
Great, thank you. So first, just a little bit about the CDO. So as you've probably already seen in numerous places, the mission of Yale SOM is to educate leaders for business and society. And across the school, this is really, really integral to everything that we do: academics, extracurricular activities, as well as job search, and how really how companies appeal to our students and interact with you. Within the CDO, we also have a vision that really guides us, and that's to empower dynamic careers and explore, educate, and thrive together. Every piece of that is really important to us, and what I really like to talk to applicants about is the last word: together. We see this as a partnership, and it's really the more people engage with us, and the more that you will really get value from a lot of the support and connections that we're providing. And it really is an ongoing process that we want to be dynamic. It is going to be changing, and it's really lifelong. It's not just about your time at SOM, but really we also, as a career development office, provide lifelong career services well beyond your time physically at SOM throughout your years as an alum as well. So who is in our office? Our office is organized into two sub-teams. We have the career education and coaching team, which is what Joel is a part of, as you can see. And they primarily are industry agnostic. They work across industries. However, there are individuals who specialize in different programs. So Joel specializes in the asset management program, as well as working with other MBAs as well. On the other side, we have our employer partnership team, and they are organized by industry, and they work primarily with employers and also alumni in that employer capacity. I lead both teams, and one of the things to note, so the employer team, while they are organized by industry, and that's how they decide who's working with what employers, one of the things that has been really exciting about the asset management program, as we've talked to employers about it and educated them and started to share with them profiles of students who are interested in the program and the students who are already involved in it, is how many employers from outside financial services are really excited about using the asset management students in asset management roles in their organizations. Many large companies have an asset management function internally, and they have been really excited about tapping into this talent as well. So that's been really interesting from our employer partnership side to see, all the different ways that we can build relationships and open up different kinds of opportunities for students. So we really see this as your career journey, that there are, and it's lifelong, it's career management. I purposely always put career management in the middle, not job search, because you're never going to be done. And there are three main components. There's assess, which is the pieces that you think of, what do you want to do with your life? What do you, what part of asset management is really what's interesting to you? Do you want to work for a hedge fund? Do you want to work for a pension fund? Do you want to work internally for a large corporation managing some of their assets? There are so many different ways that this could look. Do you want to be in a very large organization? Do you want to be somewhere smaller? And we use a number of different tools to support you in trying to work through some of those decisions and figure out what the best fit for you is. And academics are a huge way to also start assessing, how do you want to use these skills? Where do you want to use these skills? And to ask yourself those questions and to work with us to really refine your focus. And then prepare. The prepare piece is often what people think of as job search. Preparing your resume, preparing, getting your networking story down, preparing all the different ways that you're going to be finding information, preparing yourself to talk to different kinds of people. We have a number of different ways that we work with students to do that. One-on-one coaching goes across all of them, but we also do mock interviews. We have a number of different tools and research resources. We also have a lot of student clubs that support students, especially the investment management club in this case, to really make sure that you're as ready as possible. And then the connection piece, which is what people think of as finding a job, even though it's one piece of it. The interviewing, the really sending in applications, informational interviews, talking to alumni, networking, and actually talking to people about actual possible roles. All of them are vital to success. I would say the most successful students and alumni are the people who really don't ever think they're done with any of these steps. The more that you start preparing and practicing your interviews, the more you think, oh, is this really the right focus for me? And you might go back to assess. As you start connecting with people and talking to people and networking, they might give you ideas that you hadn't considered before. And that might start having you ask more questions about, how do I really want to use my skills? Where do I really want to be focusing? And what do I really need to research? How do I need to really be prepared to make sure that I get this role? So they really are ongoing and iterative, and together, they are what will make you successful in your career. The other piece that I always like to mention, and I probably mentioned this many times to applicants, I mentioned this many times to incoming students as well as graduating students, is one of the most important times to revisit this idea of a career journey is actually as you have a job, as you're leaving school and you're starting that job, because you want to think about, what are you really going to do the first 6 or 9 months? What do you really want to learn? Where do you want to grow? What do you need to do on your own to prepare yourself? What research do you need to do? Who do you need to talk to? What skills do you need to build to make sure that you're ready to take that on? And what connections do you need to build? Who do you need to be reaching back to or connecting with, either for forward looking or keeping in touch with who you might want to leverage going forward? So the more that you can really continue this cycle throughout your career, really the more successful and the more you'll enjoy it as well as a process. So, oops, here we go. So our curriculum is really built on some foundations. We really have career management basics, which are what I was just going through, and sort of how we think about your career, how we think about a career journey. And all students are expected to complete that. We start over the summer. Joel's going to go through the details of what that looks like through the summer and fall with you in a minute, but we really start working with you early because we know that there's a lot that we want to make sure that you have as a baseline. So when you come to school, you're really ready to start on some of those more interconnected pieces and the pieces that are going to be much more employer and alumni facing. And so you're ready for them. Then we have things that are more tailored that some of you might, everyone is expected to do the foundational pieces. And then there are some that are more focused strategy sessions on different areas that, you know, might be what you need at a given moment. A strategy session on building a target list, or a strategy session on negotiating, or on interviewing, depending on really from the foundations, what do you really need to work on even more in a much smaller setting. So, and the idea of those strategy sessions is that you go in and you walk out a half hour, 45 minutes later, further along in the process. They are working sessions. You're really doing the work, working with some of your classmates to really further your skills in that moment. And we also have a lot of other smaller group work similar to that, that really is, you get to pick and choose what do you need. And I would say also take advantage of as much of it as possible, because the more that you do and the more that you practice, really the easier it will seem and the more successful you'll be. And individual coaching. We have individual coaching available to our students starting in the summer. Once we usually start with some of our curriculum and the workshops, and then at pretty early on in that process, then we open up individual coaching to you. We start with work that's a little bit broader in terms of what do you want to be doing, and starting with your resume, and then it gets more and more specific to your actual job search and the strategy that's appropriate for you, and what are your goals and how do you actually get there. It is completely up to you how much you take advantage of coaching, and I would say that based on the feedback we get from students across our programs, the students who really get to know our office and work with us closely are the ones who usually feel like they have had the best experience in terms of their job search and their outcomes as well. Joel, do you want to talk about the details of the curriculum a little bit more?
Yeah, so this is kind of a quick snapshot of the summer and fall timeline as we sort of get ready to kick off each class each year. So one thing to sort of note about this is because the program is a one-year program, at least the asset management piece. So things are a little bit more accelerated than maybe what a two-year program might seem. And so how that sort of plays out is, while you have the personalized support and resources that you see sort of on the top two lines are kind of throughout your time. In particular, if you look at the curriculum section, the summer series is sort of a workshop series that I conduct over the summer. So we have 6 sort of live sessions that we do with students. And again, kind of around that assess, prepare, connect formula. We start out with some more of the assessment pieces around strengths and assessment, and kind of a larger overview of the industry and the space, and kind of what the sort of the practical applications are. We also do resume a little bit earlier for this program because your resume book goes live to employers sooner than it does for other programs as well. So one of the things is having a completed resume prior to sort of the start of classes, so that the resume book will go out to sort of our specific employer group for this program at that time. And so that's kind of the bulk of the summer. We also have personalized coaching over the summer. So we'll start off, in June with a one-on-one with myself typically, and then kind of move from there. But that's a way to sort of more personalize your approach, where a lot of the workshops and content are a little more general. Being able to sort of take some of that and make it more specific to you and your goals and your search is part of that strategy and coaching piece. And then, as you see, we sort of move on into more strategy sessions that are asset management particular, as well as mock interviews as we start to think about interviewing for winter experience, and then maybe into the spring for full time. And it depends a little bit on your track. And so I did some mock interviews over the summer, even for students that were applying for analyst roles. So it really depends a little bit. So the timing can shift based on sort of the individual piece. And luckily, with the size of the program, we're able to really individualize a lot of the coaching and the content pretty well. So.
Great, thank you. So just to revisit, really, our goal with the curriculum and what we design and how we do is really to make sure that it's integrated, it's personalized, it's flexible, especially for this program. One of the benefits of this program is its size, and that we can really work with you in a very tailored way, knowing that you may need very different guidance and support than some of your classmates, depending on your goals and your backgrounds. And we really aim to serve all of that and have the flexibility to do so. Student-centric, 100%, and results-oriented. We also going back to how I started, it's really collaborative. It's collaborative among us. It's collaborative among my team. Really, there's so many of us working on your behalf, as well as collaborative with the students and making sure that we are meeting your needs and getting, helping you reach your goals, and as comprehensive as possible. So this is some employment outcomes. Many of you may have seen these. This is the employment data that is currently on the SOM website. As you may or may not be aware, 2020 data is not yet available. That's true across the board for most schools right now. The way our collection process works, it will be available soon. This is actually the time of year that it's almost available, and it will be available in a few weeks, but it is not yet. So for now, I'm showing you 2019 data. If you are curious, in a few weeks, if you look at the SOM website, you will see that it's updated and will have 2020 employment information by industry. Certainly by the second week in November, that should be there. So if you are curious about it, you can keep an eye on it. But what I can tell you, a few things. One is that these numbers and the breakdown by industry are not significantly different from year to year, most years, and that has held this year as well. There's some slight differences here and there. But what I want to point out is really the piece of that almost 10% is some form of investment management last year. And that on top of that, in addition to that, is private equity and venture capital. So that's not included in that. So it's really important. Actually, no, it isn't. That is. I'm sort of looking. What's not included in that is like the diversified financial services, which some of that can actually fall into it as well. This is by industry, and that's sort of where I start hesitating as I'm looking at it, because it's, as I said earlier, there are many industries that there are many functions that are asset management that would fall into other industries. So, for instance, there are many large tech companies that have asset management arms that we're very excited in the resume book for the asset management students and for tapping into all of you in this program. And in a chart like this, they will still be listed under technology because it is by industry. It's not by the function that someone's doing. And so this is just people really purely in the asset management industry. The other that to be aware of is many nonprofit portfolios, whether they are endowments or foundations of kinds, would fall under nonprofit potentially, not in the investment management piece of the pie here. And so that's something else. So, I think it's really important to look at the pie overall and to get a sense that it's a significant part, and this is for the MBAs, but it's a significant part of our culture and of really the relationships we have and the choices people make. But the more important place to look at where the relationships is in the details, because the details will give you so much more in terms of, oh, those are places I really want to work. And I can promise you that a number of companies that are on this list fall into, very across the board places on the pie that I just showed you, depending on what their primary industry supposedly is, according to, sort of how those things are categorized. So I would really encourage you to look at the list of employers. And these are all places just from 2019 that MBAs took full-time and internships. And you can see it's really across the board. Things that there are large companies, small companies, there are hedge funds, there are, you can see the investment banks, bulge bracket, as well as boutiques. You can see some that are just really pure investment management, like Bridgewater, BlackRock, Cambridge Associates. You can see Hill House, which is in China. Also, there are a number of impact investing organizations included here, which I know that there's often a lot of interest in. Acumen, which is a nonprofit, Clean Capital, Cross Boundary, just looking at the list, Tortoise, Capital Advisors is also impact investing. So there's so many different ways that this can look and ways that asset management can look, and the ways that it looks at SOM and the ways that our relationships really can connect you to amazing different kinds of opportunities. This is where, to get that list even broader, where students graduating between 2014 and 2019 chose to go. And so it's another sort of broader list of the asset management employers. And so I would really encourage you also to look at that. And are these places you would be interested in working? These are all places that SOM has connections with already. And are these the kinds of places that are interesting to you? And also look at how different so many of them are from each other and how much variety and possibility there really is. Something that I found out last year as I was first doing research across Yale in terms of asset management when we were first launching this program was that 9% of Yale SOM alumni work in asset management. And that was surprising to me, that just out of Yale SOM. In addition to that, over 3,000 Yale alumni work in asset management. So the alumni network, even though this program is very new, the alumni network from Yale in asset management is really deep, and Yale alumni, whether they're SOM alumni or broader Yale alumni, are extremely receptive and excited about this program. They're extremely excited about students and supporting each other and connected. And so I really just encourage you to think about, which of these places are interesting to you, and who would you want to talk to, or which company would you want to talk to someone at, and know that there are already alumni who would be thrilled to talk to people at all of them. So with that, I feel like I've talked quite a bit. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily to throw some questions that you've been asking toward us. And if you have other questions, please keep chatting them into the Q&A box, and we will try to get through as many as we can. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Abigail and Joel. So first of all, the first question I got, I was a little puzzled by, because I don't speak the career development lingo. So someone asked if the program is hedge fund designated. And by that, I only hear about things like STEM designation in kind of the admissions world. So by that question, I'm making the assumption that it has to do with, is this program something that hedge fund managers would be interested in recruiting from? That's kind of where I'm getting.
So as a formal designation, I agree with you. I'm not exactly clear, but what I can say is to answer, we've had tremendous response from hedge funds, both in terms of being interested in sending some of their employees and participating in the program, as well as hiring students, both for the winter experience as well as positions afterward. This year, we've been having a lot of hedge funds ask us for the resume books of the students currently. So there's definitely a lot of interest, and there's a lot of the guest speakers who are involved in teaching the program work at hedge funds and have very deep ties to them. So I'd say in terms of any kind of formal designation, I'm not exactly sure what that question is referring to, but in terms of really being grounded in very practical knowledge and application for hedge funds, I think that there are few, if any, programs that are as grounded and appropriate for someone who wants a career at a hedge fund.
Yeah, I'd argue that that's fair, just at least from what I've seen in the last year. So another question, does the CDO curriculum change if you're doing a joint degree with the MBA program? So I imagine some of our viewers today are considering a joint degree with the MBA program and the asset management program. So can you speak to the career resources they would access while working on the other degree as well?
Sure. So yes. So if you were doing a joint degree, you'd have access to both. The asset management students get access to almost everything that the MBA students do. So there's not a lot of difference. The difference is that this is a one degree program when it's a standalone program. And so the focus is for post-graduation is on full-time employment. Whereas if someone is doing the joint degree, after their first year, their focus will be on an internship. And so their first year would be focused more on an internship focused search. Other than that, the resources are very, very similar. We, as I said in the beginning, with our coaching team, we have people who are really the primary person leading the programming and the primary contact for different programs, but students are open to speak with and work with any of our coaches across programs. So that's true no matter what. I would say the really the biggest difference is just that internship focused in the first year for people doing a joint degree. Otherwise, in terms of what people are actually accessing, it's, you know, the resources that are available and the programming that's available is, I'm trying to think of anything. I don't think there's anything that's different.
Okay. I received a question that I'm happy to answer. It's a question similar in vein to what we were just talking about. So if someone's applying to the MBA and the asset management program, from the position of admissions, they're asking, do they need to notify both admissions teams? You're actually doing that right in your application. There's no need to shout out to myself or my colleagues in the MBA office that that's what you're doing. You actually do that right within your application. And also it's important to know that you must meet the requirements of both programs independently. And if admitted to both, you're independently admitted to each program. And so from that point forward, we're collaborating as offices, but we otherwise do not. So it's important to know and understand that if admitted to one and not the other, you're not suddenly disqualified from the other, right? Or if admitted to one, you're not necessarily going to be admitted to the other. So I hope that that kind of helps to clarify that question. So let's see what else. That's very admissions based, so I'll save that for later. So after graduating, do alumni still have access to Yale SOM CDO services? Noting that there may be students who do not manage to secure a job offer while still studying, so have to continue their job search after graduating. Do you see many instances of that, Abigail and Joel, or?
So the quick answer is yes, and I actually have more to talk about it. Yes, so you actually have lifelong career services with us. You will continue student access usually through the end of August. We actually extended it this year later, but it's usually through the end of August. Although for this program, it would be later because it's a specialty master's program. And we do it based on how different programs have different standards in terms of expectations across the board, and it's very broad. But for anything that falls under a specialty master's, that is 6 months. For an MBA, it's 3 months. And so we follow how we give access to students as students, the same thing. So there's a few limitations that go into effect because, you know, during the fall after you've already graduated, but for the most part, you have access to all the same resources, at least for 6 months after graduation. That said, you have access to our office and many resources and coaching for a lifetime, and job postings and information about employers and employer contacts. So a lot of it continues no matter what. And one of the things, you know, we don't do that because we expect people to not have jobs at graduation. Most of our students actually do have jobs at graduation or very soon after, or they've chosen for whatever reason for themselves that they are making that a little bit later than it would otherwise be. So the reason that we have that lifelong career services is that people often take a job and then a few years later think, you know what, this is great for my first job, but I'm ready for something new. Sometimes people come back to us 10 years later. Sometimes they'll come back to us, something's changed in their life. It could be something great, like they had, you know, they have a family and they have kids and they moved somewhere that they didn't expect to be living, and now they need a new job in this new location, or this new sort of priorities have shifted. Other times it could be, you know, that something happened and they got laid off and they want support getting back on their feet. And whatever the reason, it doesn't really matter. We're always here for you. We often have alumni coming back who haven't talked to us in 20 years and, you know, just are ready for their next act and to figure out what it is. Everything in the middle. But so the short answer is yes, and the longer answer is that most of the alumni who use our services are using it not because they didn't get a job upon graduation, but because they're doing a consequent job search later in their career.
Great. Getting lots of questions about VC and PE industry. So what support is provided in terms of going into VC and PE is one of the questions. We'll kind of start there.
So those are industries, and Joel, if you want to chime in as well, I'll start my answer. You know, those are industries that are very student driven. in terms of they are industries that for the most part, organizations are on the smaller side and don't hire tons of people in any given year at any given time. And so networking is crucial, and really having the skills that they're looking for is extremely important. Depending on the kinds of roles that you're interested in those organizations, there definitely can be opportunities. There are a lot of PE and VC firms that we have relationships with. There's just, there's not a ton of hiring for MBAs. It's actually, in many ways, those companies are probably more interested in the asset management students than in MBAs, depending on the roles that they're looking for. And so there's a lot of variety. We do, though, have a lot of alumni who work in those fields. Most of them did not do that directly out of school, though. Most of them did something else first. Joel, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, just to echo that, private equity in particular doesn't do a lot of post-MBA hiring. There's only a sort of a certain number of firms that have that kind of formal track. It's typically either very early career or later career type of hiring that goes on there. And unless it's like a really very large private equity firm, there's not as much kind of formal recruiting as you would see in a lot of other financial services. And so I think that's a good point. It's certainly possible. And I think looking at kind of earlier career types of analyst tracks, if that's your profile and you do the asset management program, I think that there's some opportunity, especially for ones that are more quantitatively focused and are looking for students and individuals that have kind of a quantitative background. A lot of PE firms are basically like banking or consulting to PE, and it's sort of a traditional sort of valuation and modeling skill set. But there are some, I think, that maybe are kind of turning into more quant-oriented approaches. So those are a couple of other things, but it's not nearly as sort of streamlined as the recruiting process for large hedge funds, for banks and other asset managers as well. So
Thanks.
Great, yeah. So I'm also getting some questions about, I'm seeing some questions here regarding international recruitment. So some that are actually looking to work outside of the US and leveraging the career development's resources to that end. So can you speak a little bit to not only the domestic recruiting possibilities, but also what exists outside of the US and maybe the appetite for that?
Sure. So we do, as a career office, we do maintain and build relationships with organizations outside the US as well as inside. There are certain regions of the world that we have more of those relationships. A lot of it is tied to where we also have more alumni. And it's in some ways ends up being self-perpetuating, because then more students end up wanting to go back to those regions as well. But we do have a number, if you even look at the list behind me of employers, there are a number of them that are not US based. And so if there are certain regions of the world that you're interested in, you can actually look on the SOM website and you can see by region where people are, and you can dive into that a little bit deeper, which might give you a little bit of a better sense of that. But a lot of those are relationships that the CDO does have. We also have always had different kinds of recruiting events with international organizations. Historically, some of those have included some treks, visits to different places over different kinds of school breaks. And we have also always had some organizations who have done virtual presentations or virtual networking. Now that the entire world is virtual this year, that's actually in some ways made an even more even playing field, because it was something that we were doing with international employers anyway. And I think that some of them weren't as sure this was going to attract students in the same way. And I think some students weren't sure that they were going to be considered the same way. And now that everything has been virtual for so long, I think that shift is actually, and that's a shift that I think is going to stick. I think that really leveraging all of the ways that people can virtually connect is only going to improve really the depth of those connections with a lot of those international employers who we already work with.
Great, thank you for that. And so I actually have a really great question. It relates to the current global health pandemic. So with regard to COVID-19, Wendy asks, many financial services firms have launched cost-cutting strategies since March this year, including layoffs. For students starting in 2021, although the market situation might be unpredictable, let's assume the job market is still going to be somewhat challenging. How will the Career Development Office assist students, especially those in this new MMS program, to get prepared for such a difficult market?
That's a great question. You know, and I think it really speaks to the awareness that you are of the situation that we are in, and also the uncertainty. And I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't, so I don't know when this will turn around.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would say that the answer, though, or my answer, and Joel, if you want to answer this, you can as well. I think we all have different takes on it. Is that the job of the Career Development Office doesn't actually change that much. So much of what we're doing is continuing to seek out employers who are really interested in hiring, and where are those opportunities. And what we've been finding this year is that those opportunities continue to exist. Yes, especially in asset management, there have been layoffs, and there have been, it has been a very challenging market in many ways. At the same time, we are still hearing from asset management firms interested in students and who still want to keep their pipeline. And so it's really, how do we make sure that we are leveraging those opportunities as much as possible and creating as many of them in as streamlined a way for all of you as we can. And I think, you know, the necessity of that only becomes more so, but it's not really anything new. It's more just making sure that we're making it as efficient and productive as possible. I think the other thing is that hiring for 2022 is, well, it's not even, yeah, hiring for 2022 is a long way off. And, you know, a lot can change in a lot of different directions. And so a lot of it is, the more that we build our relationships with employers, the more that we can make sure that you're on their mind when they do, you know, really start picking up hiring. But also, most employers, even when they are cutting back, still have needs, and they are sometimes quieter about what those needs are. But the more that we can make sure that we're building strong relationships, then we can make sure that we're the ones who are hearing about them when they do come up.
Yeah, I would only add that while the market there's certainly a lot of uncertainty in the market right now. I don't know that that's necessarily translated into significantly fewer opportunities. It's just been a little bit different of a process, maybe, than what we're used to, given all of the sort of the uncertainty around what's going on, and especially as it played out in the spring, was sort of more chaotic, and then it sort of leveled off quite a bit since then. So my sense is there's still, while it may be a challenge, and it's probably always going to be a challenge in this space in particular, you know, I think that we are well positioned to kind of continue putting students in this space, just given the location of where we're at and how many sort of hedge funds and other asset managers are in this space. You know, the connections within Yale and the faculty and our office, I think it bodes well for continued sort of success for our students, even amongst sort of the challenges that are likely to continue in the short run.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you for that. And so let's see. It seems that this program is geared toward quantitative investment. Are there many fundamental hedge funds asset managers who are also interested in recruiting students from this program?
I'll actually start with that. I think I'm probably the one that set off these list of questions earlier. Yes, so as I've been working with all of this first incoming class throughout the summer and early in the fall, there's a good mix of students that want to do something that is more quantitative or like very alternative investment oriented. And then there's many that want to go into sort of a traditional you know, finance track and go through that process. So the program is really for everyone. I think that you're going to get the skills for both of those. You're going to get a lot of quant whether you want it or not. That's just a part of the curriculum, and I think it's going to be helpful. But there's still plenty of you know, things that are looking at sort of like, again, traditional asset classes, traditional sort of you know, fundamental research and traditional products or whatnot. And so I think the long-winded way of saying that, yes, this program is kind of for everyone that wants to get into asset management. You can take some of these skills and go down a more quantitative track, especially if you come with very strong quant skills. You can also go down more traditional finance and asset management roles as well.
Yeah, I would say, and this is definitely something I would encourage you to, there are some, I don't know if they're up at the moment, but there are some recorded events that Toby Moskowitz, who is one of the people who really designed the curriculum and the program, did and created last year. And I would really encourage you to watch those and listen to those, because I think in some ways they address really what this program is designed for and what his vision of what he wants to be teaching you and why he thinks it's so important, given he really lives at the crossover between academia and hedge fund. And really, how do you really make sure that you're the best of all of the academic knowledge and the practical application, and how do you put it together in the most productive, efficient, really valuable way? And that's really what his vision has been from the beginning of this. And so I think, in that there will certainly, the program is not the same as just taking asset management classes in an MBA. An MBA is a very different degree. It's a great degree. I have one, and it's a lot of what I work with, but it's different. And I think that that's also a question for those of you considering both degrees, that they really are different. It's not just more. It really, they're complementary skill sets in many ways. But the asset management degree is really a focus on a lot of the very practical side of, and really a deep understanding of that quantitative basis. And how do you actually use it, and how do you put it together with a lot of those qualitative analyses as well. But I think that there's certainly, as you think about whether this is the right program for you and is the joint degree right, to really think if that quant side is what really excites you, then you really want it, you're in the right place in many ways. And I'd say if it's what you absolutely don't like, you're going to struggle. I mean, everything I have heard Toby say about this is, it's really, it is a quant heavy program, and it is designed to be that way because that's what's needed in the industry and in the sort of in this space. And so, Emily, you can chime in. I'm sort of overstepping. I'm not the academic expert on this at all, but I can just say from what I've heard them, how I've heard them talk about really their intention with the academics, and what I've heard from employers in terms of their interest and why this program is so exciting to them, because they really are looking for people who have that combination of really that deep understanding of, sort of from a pedagogical standpoint, as well as that application and people who can put it together.
I want to get you over working for admissions for the program, Abigail, because you hit the nail on the head. In any case,
employers get it, because that's what I hear from them. That's why they're interested.
Well, I'm glad we're hitting home with that point. I think we have probably just enough time. We have just kind of a minute to close out. We've gotten some great questions. A lot of them I'm noticing are very admissions specific though. So I have a number of Q&A sessions pretty much once a week, all the way through until the application deadline, which is January 13th at 5 p.m. Eastern. So if you have lots of burning asset management admission specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out to assetmgmt.admissions@yale.edu or join me for one of those Q&As, because as Abigail said, there's lots to say about that. And also, yes, the video is available for Toby's kind of overview of the whole of the program. So I really encourage people that have more general questions about this program to view that information. We are going to make this available to those who attended and registered for today's session if you want to revisit some of Abigail's slides or some of the things we've talked about. So I'll let Abigail and Joel kind of close it out with just, telling us about, kind of overall, in your experience working with students as part of the CDO at Yale SOM, what kind of sets a student apart in terms of leveraging the CDO's resources and making the most of what's available? What are kind of the key things that a student needs to come into this program with?
Joel, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think one of the really important things is come in prepared to put in a lot of work on sort of all aspects. So it's really important to do well in the academics and to learn all of the sort of skill sets and theory that you need to be able to put into practice. And then on the same token, the students that really put in, again, it's not just about working hard and putting in long hours, but really working smart around your career strategy is super important. And then I think the last thing is be ready to network. Not everybody is super comfortable coming in with networking, and I've had students that took a while to get there, months and months into their program. And once it sort of clicked for them, it sort of opened up everything, and they were having coffee chats, 2, 3, 4 times a week after that. And so one of the things I really push for is this is a very networking based industry. It's very difficult to just apply for jobs and get interviews. And so regardless if they have a formal recruiting track or not, networking is going to be paramount, and sort of coming in with that mindset that ready to sort of, even if it's uncomfortable, to be able to do it is really important.
Absolutely. Thank you. The one thing I would add is seems probably like a master of the obvious, or maybe it's that I lead the office that really puts in, my team is really working on your behalf. And it is, it's really never lost on me, although I don't think I stop and think about it that often, how rare it is to have a team of 20 or 21 people working on your behalf for your career. And it is something that is unlikely to happen ever again in your career. So use them, take advantage of them, whether it's the coaches or the events that the employer team is organizing, or different kinds of resources that we are purchasing or connecting you with or giving you access to. It's impossible to do everything across SOM that you want to, and I think that's one of the things people struggle with the most. I would say let yourself go on that one. You're never going to be able to, but really take advantage of what you do have access to. And I think the best way to start with that is the summer programming. We, in many ways, spoon feed you sort of what to think about, when to think about it over the summer. So when you are at school and everything's being thrown at you very quickly from academics, from us, from everything, you're already grounded in it. And so I think the students who are the most successful are the ones who really take the time to not just sort of phone it in, like, oh, I did this, check, or it's I have the video going, but I'm not really paying attention, but to really do it and to do the next steps. And we almost always have sort of activities that we leave you with after each of those before the next session, and to do them and to take the time over the summer, whether you're still working or you've taken time off, to give yourself that gift. So when you are ready to go, as Joel said, you're really ready and you really can make the most of it.
Great. I think that's a great point to leave everyone on. So thank you so much, Abigail and Joel, for joining me today. This has been wonderful. And I look forward to continuing to engage with both of you and all these wonderful applicants as we wait for the application deadline, January 13th. I hope to see all of your applications then. Take care.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.